It's a routine traffic stop that takes a shocking turn. A police officer pulls over a car, unaware that the man he's about to confront is not just any driver, but an FBI agent on a special mission. What happens next will leave you speechless. At first, the officer is dismissive and condescending, questioning the agent's authority and role. The tension rises as the agent tries to keep his cool, knowing the consequences of making a scene. But the officer doesn't back down, throwing out disrespectful comments, seemingly unaware of the power struggle unfolding in front of him. As the conversation escalates, something unexpected happens. Just minutes after the officer's arrogance, the tables completely turn. The agent, now fed up, reveals his true identity, and suddenly, the cop finds himself in a position he never imagined, on the wrong side of the law. Handcuffed and in disbelief, the officer's world is turned upside down. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into this incredible story, uncovering the dramatic twist that left everyone stunned. What caused this dramatic shift, and how did the cop go from in control to completely powerless? You won't want to miss what happens next. To understand what led up to this shocking moment, let's rewind a bit. The FBI agent, who we'll call Agent Williams, had been working undercover for months on a high-stakes case involving organized crime in the area. His mission was sensitive, requiring him to keep a low profile and avoid any unnecessary attention. So when he was pulled over by Officer Davis, a local cop with a reputation for being hot-headed, he had no idea it would turn into a confrontation that could threaten everything he was working for. At first, Williams was calm, trying to de-escalate the situation. He knew better than to get caught up in a petty argument. His job depended on his ability to stay composed under pressure. But Officer Davis didn't seem interested in listening. The officer kept questioning his identity, his reason for being in the area, and made subtle jabs at Williams, suggesting he was hiding something. What Davis didn't know was that Williams was more than capable of handling himself. His training, his experience, and his years in law enforcement were more than enough to keep him in control. As the officer's attitude became more aggressive, Williams felt the heat rising. He wasn't just being disrespected anymore, he was being targeted. What would happen when Davis found out who he really was? The tension was thick in the air, and it was clear that things were about to spiral out of control. As the moments ticked by, the tension between Officer Davis and Agent Williams grew thicker. Davis, frustrated by Williams' calm demeanor, started to push harder. "What's the hurry, huh? You think you can just drive through my town like you own the place?" His voice was getting louder, his tone increasingly hostile. The whole situation was turning into a game of power, and Williams knew that he couldn't let his guard down. Williams had faced worse in his career, but this felt different. Davis wasn't just questioning his authority, he was questioning his worth. And the fact that Davis didn't recognize him, didn't see the badge under the jacket or the calm confidence in his eyes, was a slap in the face. It was as if the officer saw Williams not as an ally, but as an outsider, someone to be put in their place. But Williams wasn't about to let this officer dictate the terms of the encounter. The more Davis pushed, the more he dug himself into a hole. What Davis didn't realize was that Williams wasn't just a random driver he could intimidate. He was a trained FBI agent with years of experience navigating situations just like this one. The more Davis antagonized him, the closer he got to crossing a line he wouldn't be able to undo. In the meantime, the officer's partner, Officer Jenkins, had been standing by, watching the exchange. Jenkins had always been the more level-headed one of the two, often rolling his eyes at Davis' antics. But even he could sense that something wasn't right. He could see the signs of frustration building in his partner and began to feel uneasy. If Davis didn't back off, things might escalate beyond what they could control. The clock was ticking. Davis' arrogance was clouding his judgment, and Jenkins could only hope that the situation would calm down before things got out of hand. But as the standoff dragged on, Jenkins couldn't shake the feeling that this was about to spiral into something far bigger than a simple traffic stop. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. Davis turned his back for a second, And that's when Williams made his move, showing his badge, revealing who he really was. The air was thick with tension as Williams watched Davis turn his back, momentarily distracted. It was now or never. In that split second, Williams pulled his badge from his jacket, holding it up just enough for Davis to see. His grip was steady, his heart racing in his chest. He wasn't sure how Davis would react, but he knew he had no choice but to reveal who he really was. The moment he did, everything seemed to freeze. Davis, who had been barking orders only seconds before, now froze. His eyes widened as they locked onto the shiny FBI badge, disbelief flooding his face. The silence that followed was deafening, and for a brief moment, Williams wondered if he'd miscalculated. Had he done the right thing? The officer's face shifted from frustration to confusion, and for the first time in the encounter, Davis seemed genuinely unsure of himself. But then came the explosion. "What the hell is this?" Davis shouted, his voice breaking the stillness with a sudden angry edge. "You think you can just flash that around and expect me to back down?" He took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists, clearly refusing to accept the situation. "I don't care who you are. You're not above the law." Williams could feel the anger bubbling to the surface, but he stayed calm, his voice low and controlled. "I'm not trying to intimidate you, officer. I'm just trying to do my job. But you're the one who's crossing a line here." Jenkins, standing off to the side, finally stepped in, trying to calm the situation down. "Davis, you need to take a step back," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "This isn't helping anyone." But Davis wasn't listening. His pride had been wounded, and now he was determined to prove a point. "You think you can just waltz in here and take over? You don't know who you're dealing with." He pulled out his radio, his hand trembling slightly. "I'm calling for backup. You're not getting away with this." William's mind was racing. The situation was getting out of control fast, and he needed to end it before things went too far. He could see the look in Davis' eyes, a mix of anger and defiance, and he knew the officer wasn't going to back down easily. The question was, how far would Davis take this? Would he really challenge an FBI agent, knowing the consequences? The tension between the two men was palpable, the air charged with an unspoken promise that something big was about to happen. But in that moment, neither of them could have predicted how quickly things would spiral. The first sirens in the distance hinted that backup was on its way, but the real question was whether Davis would still be in control when they arrived. As the distant sirens grew louder, the tension in the air only thickened. Davis's grip on his radio tightened, his knuckles turning white. He was waiting for backup, but there was something in the way he held the device, the frantic energy in his movements, that made Williams uneasy. Davis wasn't just angry. He was on the edge of something dangerous. Williams' instincts kicked in. He knew that if this continued, it would spiral far beyond a simple traffic stop. He needed to de-escalate fast before backup arrived and the situation exploded. But as he opened his mouth to speak, a sudden voice rang out from behind him, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Everything all right here, officers?" Both Williams and Davis froze. Williams quickly turned his head, his heart pounding. It was another cop, one he hadn't seen before, emerging from the shadows of the street. He wasn't in uniform, though, and there was something off about the way he approached, his movements too deliberate, too calm. Davis's reaction was instant, a mixture of surprise and relief flooding his face. "Yeah, everything's fine now. Just a misunderstanding," he said, too quickly, almost as if he were trying to cover up something. Williams noticed the subtle shift in Davis's posture, how his shoulders relaxed, how his hands loosened. The sudden appearance of this mysterious officer seemed to have completely changed the atmosphere. But Williams wasn't fooled. Something was off. You could sense the way the new arrival's eyes kept darting between him and Davis, almost like he was assessing the situation, not in the way an officer would, but in a way that felt too calculating. "What's your name?" Williams asked, his voice steady, but the suspicion in his tone unmistakable. The stranger smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just a local cop. You can call me Officer Matthews, he said, as if that was enough. But before Williams could question him further, Davis spoke up again, this time with an almost too eager tone. Matthews is good. He's one of ours. We were just about to wrap things up here. No harm done. There was something about the way Davis spoke that made Williams' blood run cold. It wasn't just the officer's words, but the way Matthews' gaze lingered just a little too long on Williams, a silent communication passing between them. Williams felt his stomach drop as the pieces started to fall into place. What kind of misunderstanding was this really? The backup sirens were growing louder now, signaling that the situation was about to escalate once again. But Williams knew things had already gone past the point of no return. There was more to this encounter than just a disrespectful cop and an undercover agent. And now, with this new player on the field, the stakes were higher than ever. Williams' heart was pounding in his chest as he assessed the situation. Everything about this encounter felt wrong. The arrival of Officer Matthews, Davis's sudden change in demeanor, none of it added up. His gut told him that this wasn't just about a traffic stop gone sideways. He had to act fast before things got completely out of hand. Matthews, Williams said, his voice firm, "You're not fooling anyone. What's really going on here?" His eyes never left the new officer, narrowing with suspicion. Matthews' calm smile faded slightly, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he shifted his weight, eyes flicking back to Davis for just a moment. That brief exchange was all Williams needed to know that they were more than just local cops. His mind raced. They weren't just two officers working together. They were covering for something much bigger. Something that Williams wasn't supposed to know about. Before Matthews could respond, the sound of another set of sirens blared down the street. Backup had arrived, but it wasn't the kind of backup Williams had expected. A black SUV screeched to a halt, and two more figures stepped out. But these weren't cops. They were wearing plain clothes, business suits, and an air of authority that immediately put Williams on alert. Davis's face drained of color, and Matthews' eyes hardened as he looked at the new arrivals. It was then that Williams realized the truth. This wasn't a case of disrespect between a cop and an agent. It was a cover-up, a setup. One of the men in suits walked toward Williams, a smug smile crossing his face. "Agent Williams," he said smoothly, "I'm afraid you've been led down the wrong path." Williams's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man's smile widened. "Let's just say, we've been watching you for a while. You've gotten too close to something you weren't meant to uncover." He paused, then gestured toward Matthews and Davis. "These two were just doing their part to make sure you didn't get any ideas. But now it's time for you to come with us." Williams's breath caught in his throat. He had been so focused on Davis and Matthews that he had completely missed the larger picture. These men weren't just local officers. They were part of a much deeper operation, one that had infiltrated the very police department. It was bigger than anything he could have anticipated. As the suits moved closer, Williams instinctively reached for his gun, but before he could act, the sound of a gunshot rang out, shattering the silence. The men in suits froze. One of them collapsed to the ground, a spray of red staining the pavement. Williams's head snapped toward the source of the shot, and to his shock, it was Officer Jenkins, who had been standing off to the side the entire time, holding his weapon, aimed squarely at the man in the suit. "Jenkins," Williams said, disbelief flooding his voice. Jenkins lowered his gun, his expression grim. "I'm sorry, Williams. This was never meant to go down this way. But you were right. There's something bigger here, and I couldn't let them get away with it." The other suits scrambled for cover, but before he could react, Jenkins fired another shot, sending him to the ground. The situation had gone from bad to worse, and now, with backup finally arriving, the chaos was just beginning. But in that moment, Williams realized something even more shocking. Jenkins had been working undercover all along. As the dust began to settle, the remaining officers took control of the scene. Davis and Matthews were arrested, and the truth of the operation slowly began to unravel. But as Williams stood there, the weight of the entire encounter hit him. It wasn't just a confrontation over respect or authority. It had been a calculated move to take him down, to keep him from discovering the real truth. And just when he thought he had it all figured out, Jenkins had pulled the rug out from under him. The story wasn't over yet. The real questions were just beginning. What had Jenkins uncovered, and how deep did this corruption run? It was clear now that Williams's mission was far from complete. The truth, whatever it was still out there, and with every answer came more questions.